It's no secret that starting a business is hard. Even if you have an amazing idea, bringing it to life can feel overwhelming. With HubSpot's new entrepreneurship kit, though, you can go from idea to IPO with the help of a company that knows a thing or two about growing better. The all-inclusive kit gives you step-by-step guidance and frameworks to help you crush every stage of starting a business, with tools tailored to help all along the entrepreneurial journey. It's packed with templates for project management, email, and skill development. Wow, that's a lot of templates. There's also a solopreneur guide. It's got freelance pricing worksheets and lots more you can get up and running immediately. And best of all, it's free. With expert guidance and frameworks from HubSpot, starting a business doesn't have to be so hard. So don't wait to start yours. Go to HubSpot.com/ENT to download the guide right now. All right, good morning, everyone. It's Thursday, August 15th. I'm John Weigell here with Juliet, Bennett, and this is the Hustle Daily Show. Debut Biotechnology is essentially a beauty company creating products for businesses like L'Oreal and the like. But it just added another client to the list, the U.S. Department of Defense. Turns out, Debut Biotechnology's ability to grow ingredients in a lab is a skill that the Pentagon desires right now. You might be asking why. So am I. We'll get to that in a bit, but first let's give you the hits and headlines in business and tech today. First up, Mars is acquiring Kellanova for nearly $36 billion to expand its wide snack portfolio. Chicago-based Kellanova owns brands like Cheez-Its, Yum, Pop-Tarts, Yum, and Pringles. Delicious. It sounds like a good deal. Next, Upside Foods is suing Florida, alleging its ban on lab-grown meat is unconstitutional. Florida officials have cited food safety, though Upside has received both FDA and USDA approval. This just sounds like Florida being Florida. Am I right, Juliet?
Not to go too hard on Florida here, but it sounds like it's a little bit political. And I don't get this, but it feels as though there's a political divide which associates vegetarianism and veganism with liberals and eating meat with conservatives.
Yes.
Which is hilarious. I consider myself an omnivore. I haven't noticed any political persuasions, but I think the key here is that Governor Ron DeSantis, when he signed the ban into law in May, described it as fighting back against the global elite's plan to force the world to eat meat grown in a petri dish or bugs to achieve their authoritarian goals. It seems like he's perhaps confusing cultivated meat with the movie Snowpiercer, perhaps. I just think lab-grown meat is really interesting, and it's weird how many people are so vehemently against it. Of course, if you're a cattle industry person or a cattle lobbyist, this makes sense. Sure. That's your business. You're worried people are going to start eating lab-grown meat instead of cattle. Sure, but yeah, I don't know. It's pretty funny. And Florida's, it's not the only state getting on board, and I think Italy had a problem with it also. So
yeah,
I don't know.
That's right. But it looks like they don't have the best argument against not including meat in the state. So, we'll see how that develops over time. Over from Florida to Texas. Texas is suing General Motors, alleging that the auto company illegally and secretly sold drivers' data to insurance companies. And to widen the scope a little bit to talk about U.S. inflation, it's surprisingly easing up a bit, with the consumer price index dipping below the magical 3% increase threshold for the first time since March of 2021. Now it's the federal government's move. And finally, just one day after Starbucks took Chipotle's CEO, Victoria's Secret also took a CEO from Savage X Fenty, bringing in Hillary Super to engineer a turnaround for the Victoria's Secret brand. Okay, on to the main story today. We're trying to figure out what on earth the U.S. government wants with a company that primarily deals with beauty-centric ingredients. So, Juliet, can you first tell us a bit about this company, Debut Biotechnology?
Yeah, they are actually super interesting. They're based in San Diego, and they predominantly work in the beauty industry where essentially they grow ingredients in a lab instead of naturally sourcing them. Very much like lab-grown meat that we just talked about.
Yeah, pretty much.
And they have two big clients recently in the news. One is L'Oreal. Makes sense. L'Oreal is a cosmetic company. They signed on to make ingredients for that brand's products. And of course, the other is this Department of Defense contract.
Yeah, which is $2 million worth of a contract, if I'm not mistaken.
Yeah, and what it's for is to essentially supply plans for a biomanufacturing facility. if Debut ends up building that facility, it would receive another contract worth $100 million, and that facility would take 3 to 5 years to complete.
So basically, the U.S. Department of Defense, aka the Pentagon, wants a facility similar to what Debut Biotechnology already has themselves, right?
Yeah, what's interesting about this is I think we all remember that there were a lot of supply chain issues amid the pandemic, and the U.S. has often made plans to try to bring some of our supply chains in-house. We've seen that with chip manufacturing as well. So the U.S. government wants to beef up domestic supply chains for these bio-manufactured materials and rely less on China. So it actually announced it would award up to $2 million to about 30 different companies who would submit proposals for these plans. So Debut may not be the only company that would be submitting these plans, but it is the first. And just to clarify, because I had to, not being a big science person myself, biomanufacturing uses living systems, so that could be animal or plant cells, microorganisms, to manufacture products, and that's all sorts of stuff. So plastic, fuel, chemicals, medications, vaccines, food. If you think about it, this is not at all what Debut does at all, but like a really relatable example that I found of like, what is biomanufacturing? Is like if you have a sourdough starter and you are using fermentation to make bread, you are biomanufacturing in your house.
Wow. A lot of biomanufacturers during the pandemic, I remember.
Yeah, big time.
Big thing during that time.
All you home brewers making your beers. Yeah.
Yeah, all those very dank basements, you're actually doing the same thing the Pentagon is doing. It's pretty impressive. So I guess between all of these companies, it sounds like they got a lot of applications. Why do you think they went with a company like Debut?
What's interesting is that Debut is using proprietary technology, which means, of course, they own it and we don't know, couldn't describe it to you, probably both intellectually and also because it's secret, to create bioidentical ingredients for the beauty industry. Now, what this means, I guess you can also call it biomimicry in an article that I found, but basically I read all about this. It's very interesting. There are a lot of natural ingredients that we love, but they are scarce or they're difficult to source. So essentially they're making these ingredients in a lab and they act like the natural ingredients, but they are grown, not sourced from nature. So a relatable example of this that I found was from Anne Kellanova, who is the head of advanced research at L'Oreal R&I, and she explained to the publication Glossy that vitamin C, which we all know and love, is found in a bunch of fruits, but it would take dozens of pieces of fruit to get enough vitamin C for a cosmetic solution. So biotech would step in and do something like replicate vitamin C cost effectively and at scale, and you wouldn't have to, waste a bunch of oranges and lemons or, that sort of thing.
Wow.
And it's becoming increasingly common in the beauty industry as a way to achieve sustainability.
And for this company Debut, it sounds like beauty is essentially their entire business. So where does this kind of deal with the Pentagon fall? And are they looking to maybe spread their wings a little bit to other manufacturers?
They're going to predominantly stay in beauty. But the thing about it is that even though beauty makes up 95% of Debut's business, founder and CEO Joshua Britton told Fast Company that there is actually a lot of overlap between ingredients that you need in beauty products and then ingredients that you need in both military uses and other commercial products, basically everything else. So I guess you can think of some of these ingredients as building blocks that are very versatile. And then with Debut in particular, they have already invested a lot of money into their own supply chain infrastructure, and they have that versatility. So if they need more of one thing, they can easily shift, and they would be able to do that for other needs and the Department of Defense as well.
And I wonder what exactly the Pentagon would want to make with all of this.
I feel like when I first read this, I was like, oh, obviously like mind-controlled agents and biological weapons.
Like, is it nukes?
No, apparently not. Okay. Britain was saying that Debut would not be making any materials for use in weapons. But when you look at the list of things that can be made and the sort of things that the U.S. government might deploy, you're like, oh, textiles, for use in uniforms, for use in tents, shelters, vaccines, medications, et cetera. So you're like, okay, there are other things that you might potentially make.
My mind also easily jumped to weapons. So I'm glad that we've cleared that up for everybody. All right, and that's going to do it for us today. Thanks for tuning into the Hustle Daily Show. We're a proud part of the HubSpot Podcast Network. Our editor today is Robert Hartwig. And our executive producer is Darren Clark. We've got a ton more tech and business coverage in our newsletter. If you're not subscribed, go get yourself signed up at thehustle.co/email, and we will see you tomorrow. Hey everybody, I've been listening to this awesome podcast lately called Entrepreneurs on Fire. It's hosted by John Lee Dumas, and it's available right now on the HubSpot Podcast Network. Entrepreneurs on Fire stokes inspiration and shares strategies to fire up your entrepreneurial journey and create the life that you've always dreamed of. It offers lots of energy, value, consistency, and it's for anybody who wants to learn more about entrepreneurship. It's super fast-paced and packed with valuable stories about entrepreneurs, their aha moments, their failures, and everything to what's working for them today. Recently, he had on this guest, Ashley Stahl, who talked all about her job at the Pentagon and how she evolved into becoming a top 100 TEDx speaker. She talks about evolving your brand from the ground up, leaning into the skills that you already have to build your brand, and also creating virality. It's a great listen. You should check it out. And you can listen to Entrepreneurs on Fire wherever you get your podcasts.